Newcastle Unleashed Comic-Con returned to the Vertu Motors Arena. And while there were still some good moments, it is fair to say the event felt a bit smaller and more limited than some fans may have hoped. The atmosphere was friendly, the cosplayers brought plenty of energy, and there were still things to enjoy. But like a lot of smaller Comic-Con style events in recent years, it did feel like the attractions have been reduced, and the overall variety was not quite where many people would want it to be. One of the biggest talking points was the stalls. There were definitely some positives. Comic book stalls seem to have increased this year, with a few stalls focused on comics.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Which is more than some previous years, and a welcome sight for people who actually came looking for comics at a Comic-Con. There was also a noticeable improvement for Pokémon fans. Around 3 stalls were primarily dedicated to Pokémon trading cards, offering sealed products, single cards, and accessories for collectors and players. Beyond those, several other vendors had Pokémon plushies, while a handful of stalls carried smaller selections of Pokémon cards alongside their main stock. Pokémon fans could also pose with several life-sized Pokémon statues, including Pikachu, which made for a popular photo spot throughout the day. It was not a huge Pokémon-focused event, but there was certainly more available than in previous years. Outside of those areas, however, the selection felt quite limited. There were only a couple of stalls selling actual figurines, statues, collectibles, and traditional pop culture merchandise.
That's why I'm here.
For an event centered around comics, films, television, gaming, and geek culture, the variety of collectible merchandise felt smaller than many visitors might have expected. Instead, a large proportion of the floor space was occupied by artist stalls selling prints, commissions, and handmade artwork, alongside a growing number of vendors specializing in 3D printed products. Some of the work on display was genuinely impressive, and there was clearly talent on show, but the balance felt heavily weighted in that direction. As a result, many stalls began to feel quite similar after a while.
Déjà vu.
This seems to reflect a wider trend affecting many smaller conventions in recent years. As specialist sellers become less common at local events, artist alleys and 3D printing businesses have increasingly filled the gap. While that keeps events running, it can sometimes leave visitors looking for comics, figures, movie props, and rare collectibles, feeling that there is less to discover than there once was. Another thing that stood out was the use of space. There appeared to be a reduced number of stalls overall, and a large amount of the venue space was taken up by the wrestling ring. The wrestling did add something different, and some people clearly enjoyed it. But it also meant the shopping and browsing side of the event felt smaller. For some visitors, that might have been fine. For others, especially people going mainly for collectibles, figures, comics, or rare merchandise, it may have left something to be desired. The ticket price is also worth talking about, and for me, this is probably the biggest criticism. Adult tickets cost around £10, which is not a huge amount on its own, but it does feel harder to justify when you compare it with other local events. Some local toy fairs charge around $4.50 for adults, with children often getting in free, and they can have more stalls, better selections of figures, toys, and collectibles, and more for collectors to actually browse. And some regular craft fairs charge around £2 for adults, with children free, and often feature a surprising number of the same artists, handmade stalls, and independent traders that you now see at smaller Comic-Con events. The main difference with Comic-Con is usually the guest lineup, but even then, you normally have to pay extra for autographs and photos. Then there are a few display pieces or photo opportunities, some of which may ask for donations or charge separately for photos. And to be fair, this is not just a Newcastle issue. It feels like an increasing problem with smaller Comic-Cons in recent years. The attractions that are meant to separate a Comic-Con from a toy fair, a craft market, or a general pop culture market seem to have become fewer in number or lower in quality. Years ago, these events often felt more packed out. You would see bigger props, proper themed sets, better panels, workshops, activities, stronger guest lineups, and a wider range of specialist stalls. When that level of content was there, the ticket price felt much easier to understand. But when the event is mainly artist stalls, 3D printed products, a few collectible sellers, a handful of paid guests, and a couple of photo displays, the value becomes harder to defend. So while the day was still enjoyable in places, I do not think the ticket price was fully justified for what was actually included. With more attractions, better variety, and more experiences included in the admission price, I would feel much more comfortable with it. The strongest part of the day was probably the cosplay. The cosplayers brought a lot of enthusiasm, and that helped lift the atmosphere. Whether it was superheroes, anime characters, sci-fi costumes, gaming characters, or horror icons, the people who dressed up gave the event much of its personality. And honestly, that is often what keeps these smaller conventions going. Even when the stalls are limited, even when the attractions feel reduced, the fans themselves bring the energy. The cosplayers, families, collectors, and people just happy to spend a day around pop culture are what make the event feel alive. So overall, Newcastle Unleashed Comic-Con was not a disaster, but it was not exactly spectacular either. It had a friendly atmosphere, some good cosplay, a few decent stalls, and the wrestling added something different. But the reduced stall variety, heavy focus on artist and 3D printed stalls, limited collectibles, and the amount of space taken up by the wrestling ring made the event feel smaller than it should have. For a casual family day out, it probably still worked. For serious collectors, or people expecting a packed Comic-Con experience, it may have felt underwhelming. Newcastle still clearly has the fan base for events like this. The enthusiasm is there, the cosplay is there, the audience is there, but going forward, it would be good to see more variety return. More collectibles, more figure stalls, more comics, more gaming, more film and TV props, and more attractions that make the event feel like a full Comic-Con rather than a smaller market with a few special guests, because the fans showed up. Now the event needs to give them a bit more to show up for. So, were you at Newcastle Unleashed Comic-Con? Did you enjoy it, or did it feel smaller than previous years? And what would you like to see added next time? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this honest review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more event breakdowns and reviews from around the Northeast.
Hey, check it out, Nerd Fight.
Yeah!